start the interview, I'm going to take my notes. And so tell me about yourself.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So my name is Eugene Naitsuk. I have been an Android developer since for last 10 years. Yeah, I'm my last job is software expert at Kaspersky Lab, where I was responsible for a lot of different things, including architecture, testing, and so on. So I think that my main achievements, it's Kaspersky library and other interesting things. So yeah, honestly, I didn't prepare this part, but anyway.
Okay. So have you ever worked like in a team, like running a team, like what size of the team? Can you talk a bit more about this?
Yeah, so last two places, yeah, where I worked, last two titles, yeah. So when I was a software expert, the size of team was around 100, no, sorry, 50 mobile developers, including Android and iOS, and I was responsible for the entire strategy of development, the architecture, and all these best practices and communication between different teams. Also, the previous title, I was a software architect in the infrastructure after testing infrastructure team, and I was responsible for after testing infrastructure for the entire company, and results of our work affect more than 100 or 1,000 of developers. 1,000 developers in R&D at Kaspersky Lab, sure. Yeah.
All right. So I'll stop you there. So we'll just go and do actual review. So
Yeah.
the task today is to design a chat application.
Chat application. Okay. So let me to share screen. Yep. Okay. 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 Do you see anywhere?
Yep, I can see it.
Yeah, sure. So I just want to write a name chat application. Yeah. So first of all, I suggest to clarify some kind of requirements. Yeah, requirements. So first of all, it's a chat. It's a chat application. So first of all, we are going to design client plus API, or client plus API and plus backend. What?
I would say let's design a client and we can discuss the API and network communication if we have time.
Okay. So the next question is what main features we are going to design. I assume that the main features will be like a list of chats, uh, chat, and the possibility to send and receive message. So it's the main functionality. Do you agree with it? Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. So the another question is very big area. Yeah, for discussions, it's authentication. Yeah, and authentication, privacy, and to end encrypting. Yeah, because all this about security. So I just suggest maybe to discuss about it if we will have a time, because it's very big topic. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I would say let's leave authentication out of scope, and we can discuss privacy later on.
Yeah, out of scope. So what else? What else interesting? So what about the users of chat application? It's yeah, it's citizens of countries where so okay. What about the auditory? Auditory is from developed countries
Yeah,
or from
let's say that we're building an app for North America, and like all your clients, all your customers gonna have really expensive phones.
yeah. So
And let's say you're expecting to have like 100 million monthly active users.
1 million or one
Let's say 100 million.
million of 100 millions of users. Yeah.
Monthly MAU,
Oh,
monthly active
yeah.
users.
Okay, now so auditory is okay. So offline support, I think it's very important feature too, but we will think, yeah, so offline support. So are we going to consider offline support, or we can begin with the assumption that everything will work only online, and the furthest step is
What's your
offline.
recommendation here?
So offline support is because our auditory is North America, and because we are designing a MVP, we can assume that we can begin with online support. Yeah, and our next step will be maybe create offline support.
Okay.
So online, offline support. So also very important about battery and optimization. Optimization. Yeah, battery and different optimizations. I mean, it's very important that our application will save
I would say we can
energy.
discuss it later on. Would you like to add attachments, images, or something like this? Do you think it's going to be useful?
So I think that it's very useful, but I think that in our MVP we can begin with only text message. Yeah, so we just can put a assumption, yeah, that we will have a lot of kinds of messages further. But now we can begin with two types of message, for example, text message and other messages. Is it appropriate?
Okay, sure.
Super. Messages. Types, it's a text and other. So that's why we don't consider image or something else. Yeah, so I suggest to summarize. So our functional requirements, it's as we discussed. Yeah, it's a list of chat, send and receive messages. Yeah, and kind of messages only text and others. Yeah, and what about non-functional? It's non-functional. It's online support, but maybe to put solutions for the offline support. Yeah, and what else? It's
I may suggest like we can skip writing it down. Like we have a list already, so there's no need to repeat it. Let's move on.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that we can fix yeah, these requirements, functional and non-functional requirements, and be key and go to the next stage. It's a high level diagram. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
So okay, high level diagram. So it's an application, and that's why there is a big desire to determine three main layers. Yeah, three main layers like domain UI and data. For what we are doing it, it's because following by layer architecture just simplifies the understanding what happens here. Yeah. So we can begin with for example, UI. Yeah, because UI is our functional, and here we can draw a what is it? It's a list of charts. Sorry, list of charts. Yeah. Next thing, it's concrete chart. Yeah, where we just need to download. Also, chart. I mean, it's also some kind of history. Yeah, some kind of history of message for concrete chart. Yep, and yeah, two main screens here, list of charts and chart. So authentication and all this stuff we just skip now. Yeah, but we can discuss about it later. So what about domains? So I think that we can begin with the main use cases. Yeah, yeah, and it's it's a chat list. No, sorry, it's a chat use case. Chat use case. Another. So so it's these two use cases. Yeah, very similar to our UI. And the next thing that the most important, it's a message use case. Yeah.
I have a quick
So
question. So when you're talking about use cases, are those components like what are those?
yeah. Sorry that I didn't clarify what does it mean. So use cases. So there are different terms and understandings of this value. So use case, it means that it's a concrete it's a concrete class that is responsible for one concrete functional case. Yeah, for example, uh, chat list. Yeah, use case. What does it mean? That this use case is responsible to get a list of chats. Yeah, it's the main responsibility of this use case. Yeah. So also there the ideas
Sorry,
about
I'm going to interrupt you. So what's the purpose? Why do you need those? Why would you go into these use cases?
We need these terms to follow a solid principle, yeah, where we just want to highlight the single responsibility, yeah, and the single responsibility. So use case, it's a single responsibility. The first and the second, we just want to highlight that this class is living in domain area, yeah. So it's pure business logic. It's a pure Java code without, for example, Android or AS specific. Yeah, it's a pure thing. Yeah. So, and potentially, first of all, these things can be split it into separate models, and the second can be used in, for example, to use as so to be used between different platforms like Android or iOS and something else. So this logic can be relocated to Kotlin to just
Okay, I understand you. I would say let's just scope everything to Android in this case. We don't need to support multi-platform. So what about data?
Yeah, what about data? So I just highlighted this, and yeah, what about data? So what about data? So we just wrote here that we just need to maybe put some solutions for the offline support. That's why I think that it's better to use a repository pattern here. Yeah, sorry, I like this repository pattern maybe. But anyway, yeah, repository pattern is very useful here because it allows to separate the interface and the implementation. Yeah, and here we can begin with very maybe very similar repositories. Yeah, like chat, like maybe chat list repository. Yeah, chat repository and message repository. So what's important here that why the name are very similar? It's because the interface, interface of repository is located at domain. Yeah, it's very important to understand. And implementation, yeah, is at data. So implementation, yeah, can work with network client, yeah, network client, and can work with a database. I don't know now that what kind of storage I can use, and that's why cache client can be just shared preference, can be database, can be just using storage, so all this, so we can hide all these details behind cache client, for example. Yeah.
Okay, I have a quick question. So why do you need cache client? As part of requirements, we don't need offline support. So what exactly we're going to be storing there?
Yeah, so currently maybe in this scheme we don't need cache client, but I just just put some additional requirement, put solutions for the offline support. Yeah, so here repository is enough, cache client we can remove, and because our repo implementation will work with the network client, and it will be enough in first stage. Further, we can change our implementation that will work with two of these. Yeah. So it's we just can remove cache client. Yeah, sure, because in our requirements we don't have very strong requirement about it. Yeah.
Okay. So let's switch gears here and tell me about how would you build
In
a
chat
network?
application, network is very important. So first of all, we just need to determine what kind of protocols we can use. So there are typical protocols that we have. It's HTTP, based on REST architecture, HTTP or HTTPS. So doesn't matter. Also, we can use a GraphQL. So advantage of HTTP is it's a very, and REST, it's very simple. And no problems, but so we can continue. GraphQL is a very good addition for HTTP, for example, but in case when we have very complex queries to the backend, and we want to save our our request. What else we have? Also, we can use a WebSockets. So WebSocket, what's the main difference between, for example, HTTP and WebSockets? So WebSockets supports a bidirectional communication. That is very important for our case, for our chat application, because a user will send and receive messages all the time. Yeah, and it's a big question how to organize this communication. Sure, we can, based on, for example, HTTP, and go further with solutions like HTTP poll link or something else. Yeah, for example, if our backend team is not very time terms, yeah, we can. Yeah, sorry.
The video hang for 5 seconds. Which protocol and which solution would you select for this case?
So I will be selected WebSockets. Yeah, because first of all, it allows to organize a bi-directional communication. Yeah, and for chat applications, it's more efficient. Yeah, we will not try additional resources for keeping connection, for organizing bidirectional communication and all this stuff. Yeah, for example, HTTP cannot do it, but yeah, it depends what version of protocol we use. For example, HTTP.
So WebSockets, they connections, right?
Yeah, WebSockets. Yeah, I think.
Do you know how they build? Like what stacks they build upon? Is it UDP? Is it TCP/IP? Like, do you know how they build on the hood?
So yeah, good question. So first
I would
of
say
all,
if you don't know this, that's totally fine. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one interesting thing, that a lot of companies like Uber and other companies, they try to build their own protocols based on UDP, for example. Yeah, and that also allows to organize some kind of bidirectional connection. So it's very similar to WebSockets, but WebSockets, as I remember, organized on top of TCP. Yeah, and why other companies create their own bicycle? Yeah, because TCP connection, what does it mean? That we just try some additional requests for for connection establishment, for verifying that everything is fine and information is delivered, and other things. Yeah, and because our quality of networks is very good, that's why a lot of companies makes assumption that everything is fine. That's why we can use, for example, UDP, because we don't need additional approval that the package was delivered. Yeah, we just make assumption that yeah, it was delivered and everything is fine.
Okay, it's fine. So question what I have, you selected WebSockets, right?
Yeah.
Would you use WebSockets for everything, or would you probably like use something else? And what are disadvantages of using WebSockets?
So disadvantage of WebSockets. So I just mentioned that is so it's I don't know, disadvantage. I think relatively it's disadvantage because yeah, it's built on TCP. That's why we spent additional request and additional time for additional checks. Yeah. Another thing. What about so another maybe disadvantage that it's a persistent connection, yeah, and because it's a persistent connection, that's why it will affect battery and stuff else, yeah, and maybe sometimes there is it makes sense to maybe turn off and to ping our server with some kind of interval, yeah.
If you ping the server with interval, how often would you do that? And what can happen if your client base grows like really large? Imagine you reach 1 billion users.
Please repeat the question. Yeah, I just want to understand one thing. Yeah, please repeat.
Basically, two questions. First one, why would you need to ping your servers? And like, what's the interval would you select? And does it scale well?
Yeah. it's very good warning, yeah, that it's not very good scalable because, yeah, we will have a lot of users. We will encounter problems like exponential growth of requests, and so there's a special term describing these situations in backend, but I don't remember exact name now. Yeah, and that's why, mm, yeah, and that's why I think, yeah, it's discussing topic. Yes, so it's just a assumption. Yeah. And what about duration and time? So maybe so. Anyway, yeah, in MVP, I think that it's better to use only WebSockets um, to simplify the entire scheme. And yeah, we just can use some kind of HTTP maybe to establish a encrypted connection, so to authenticate user or something else, and further we can use WebSockets. And yeah, I just wanted to add that WebSockets are useful for especially chatting when we send and receive some kind of messages, but such things like get history or get messages, yeah, we can implement with an alternative way, just using a simple REST API, for example. Yeah, because here we don't need a WebSocket connection for this purpose. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So imagine that like another requirement comes in. So now we want to support offline, right? So how would you change your design to support offline state?
So to support offline, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, what about offline support? Yes, sorry that I don't do all needed now. It's my fault, really. So yeah, what about offline? So first of all, in offline, we just need to determine a single source of true. Yeah, because in other cases, we just will have a lot of problems in maintaining and in debugging and all this stuff. So we have options that single source of truth can be network, can be cache, can be maybe some kind of combination or something else. Yeah, but I suggest to use a cache. And what about cache? Yeah, what does it mean? In case here, I think that so cache can be, as I described, can be shared preferences, can be, where is it? Yeah, can be shared preferences, can be database, can be storage. Yeah, can be case store, yeah, for example, but we don't consider here privacy and security. So, and shared preference is not very applicable for big data. Yeah, it's applicable for storing only just several rows, and it's enough. But for big data, I mean that hundreds, maybe thousands rows. Now it will not work. Uh, Storing on storage. So here we just need to keep some kind of structure, and we just need to follow some crude principles. Yeah, and here database is better. Yeah, because database allows to put crude, and also databases can be a place that provides some kind of concurrency. Yeah, so we know that databases like SQLite or others, they are pliable to work in very high load environments. Yeah, in a backend and so on. So that's why we can consider database as also as a way to provide a good concurrency. So,
Okay.
and
Okay. So, like, if we move more closer to implementation details, how would you store? So we decided that we're going to use a relational database, right? So how will we store the data? Like, what schema would you use?
yeah, okay, so we can, for example, here some kind of maybe messages repo or just or maybe chat repo. Okay, doesn't matter, chat repo, I think, where we just want to get some kind of no, chat repo is not very good because in the chat repository we just only read the
I would say
information.
let's skip repo. Let's talk about database.
About database. So, okay, for example, we can consider a message repo because here we have write and read operations. Yeah. And first of all, we put all our change to database. Yeah. And further,
Let me rephrase the question. So imagine you have list of chats, you have chat messages, and you have users. Right? So question, how would you store and retrieve them?
You mean what scheme
you have
I
database,
choose?
right? So imagine that you got list of chats. So you have 100 chats, right? You can click on any of them, and each chat can have, like, I don't know, 100,000 of messages. So how would you store it? How would you store it, and how would you retrieve it to display in your UI?
Yeah. So I think that you lean towards a pagination topic, yeah, because so first of all, I wanted to clarify one moment that chat repository, where we just only read the information. I think they can go directly to network client because we just only read information from our server, and we will
I would say
encounter
let's not
problems
worry
with
about
pagination.
this. Let's not worry about mediation repos. Like what I'm trying to understand is how would you store your data in database? So you need to store, like, on top of my mind, messages, chats, and users, right? That's the very least. So imagine you have database, right? Would you create any tables? Like, if you do, how many tables could you do? We're gonna have, how they would be connected, etc.
Yeah, okay. So we just want to consider only database schemes here, yeah, and how we would organize relationships between these tables. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so what about potential scheme of our potential database? So I've be so first of all, it's so I want to begin with the model chart. Yeah, so it's I think almost not almost central, but very close to central entity. So chart will have a ID, will have a will have a, for example, type, yeah, like personal, like group, like
I would say let's only support, just to make it simple, let's support one-on-one chats.
yeah,
so no
so
need for
just
group chats.
yeah, it will
So
go
every chat is a one-on-one chat.
Yeah, okay, so ID next, for example, it's participants. It will be like a list of users, so we will consider users a little bit later. Participants, admins, what else?
No need for admins. So imagine one-on-one chats, no roles, just you and your contacts.
So anyway, participants, we need in participants. And next, for example, it's image URL, yeah, the avatar of this image, and maybe the some kind of last message yeah, to show in last of chats the last message, yeah, to just understand what happened. Yeah, so it's a first it's a chat model. Yeah. Next,
Quick
for
question before
example,
what's immature? What are we gonna be storing there?
what do you mean? Image URL is just a URL to the some kind of avatar of a chat, or well, yeah, it's
I would say we don't need it. We don't need any avatars for chats. It's fine.
oh, any okay. So just we can reject it. Okay, so we just can, I think, continue with the message. Yeah, message also will have an ID, will have a type. Yeah, like we discuss text and others. Yeah, for example. Next, it's type. It's next. It will be some kind of content. Yeah, and content can be depend on type. So we will have some kind of such thing, text, message.
I would say let's make them also based on our requirements. We do not support any media, right? So it's just plain text.
Yeah, okay, so contact will be just a string, yeah, and we will remove it. Okay, so contact just a plenty string. ID type author, yeah, where will it will be user. So user, here I just use such entities like user, message, and here user again. I mean it will be just we will use ID. Yeah, so it yeah, it's very important to highlight this moment. So it doesn't make sense to put entire entities into another messages. So content, author, ID type, content, author, user, what else? Message. Yeah, it's enough from the scratch. And the last thing, it's a user that also will have some kind of ID. And okay, some kind of information, just it will be string and things like avatar and stuff else. I think that we can skip again. Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. So imagine that we would like to provide some security and user privacy. So if you store everything in clear text, it's visible, right? So how would you make sure that nobody can read messages? So imagine like your app get compromised, someone get an access to internal storage. How would you ensure that no personal information would leak?
Yeah, so first of all, we just need to organize some kind of encryption. For encryption, we just need some kind of key. So we can use here, okay, just security, yeah, security. So first of all, we can need to encrypt and decrypt all of this stuff. Yeah, we can use just IS, for example, this algorithm. And another thing that we just need some kind of key. So first of all, we can put here, for example, our encryptor decryptor, yeah, encryptor decryptor, yeah, and we will change an implementation of our repository, so it will be on the data, yeah. So what about next security? Yeah, we just need to store somewhere our key. So what we can do here? First of all, we can push our users, yeah, we can push our users to input pin, some kind of pin code. So if a user will input a pin code, what we can do, we can use a KDF function to transform pin code into K, and store on our application this key. This key will be encrypted. Yeah.
I have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt. Where would you store the pin code?
No, we don't store pin code. Pin code is in the head of every user. On the device, we can use encrypted key, yeah, plus salt, yeah. So we will use some kind of KDF plus a KDF plus IS, yeah, to encrypt our pin code and to get this encrypted code. So this oh, sorry, no, it's
I mean, it doesn't matter. Like those implementation details doesn't matter.
Yeah. So yeah.
So imagine that you have your encryption key now, right? So
yeah,
how would you actually encrypt the data? I'm not talking about ciphers. I'm not talking about algorithms. So currently you have a database, everything is stored in clear text, right? So you need to move them from clear text to something more secure. So how would you do
that? So it's if we have a key, prepared key, yeah.
Yep. You have a key. It's all good.
So all this stuff, all our repositories will work through encryption and decryption. So what does it mean? But what about encryption decryption? Oh yeah. So the question is about privacy of our data that we store on the device. Yep. So that's why we can put it here, because our cache client, for example, it's a data. Our cache client will encrypt and decrypt all data. Yeah, we just get this encrypted data and store this encrypted data to database and vice versa. So it will work like this.
So
yeah, and
I'm trying to understand. Are you going to encrypt the whole database, or are you going to encrypt some columns? Like, this part of my statement.
Okay, got it. I think that it makes sense to encrypt not the entire data, but just all information that we put into a database, so all columns. So it means like maybe the entire database. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we just will encode and decode all information that go to database.
Okay. All right. So we're on a 45 minutes mark. Usually during the interview, they would stop here, and most likely they would stop at the 40-minute mark, and then you're gonna have a chance to ask your questions. So with this in mind, I can try to give my feedback. So before we go, from anyone who's been watching, any comments?
So I can stop the sharing screen, I think, or not?
You can keep it just for the reference. So, okay, let's start first about time management, right? So introductions, like you kept it short, 2 minutes, it's good. But I would not go about like achievements, how many years you spent, because it doesn't really give any signal. Your interviewer gonna evaluate you based on whatever you're talking right now. What would be important to say is about like your experience. Is it more like on a leading side? So are you like a team lead? What side of the team? Like what the scale of the project? So for example, we have like 1 billion users. So at least like interview might have like an idea like which way to move you. Is it like more like an implementation, more like strategical stuff, etc. But you might skip it. So I would say, my name is X. I've been working on Android, work at this company, building this project. Like the whole point is that the interviewer has your resume, they can read it, And it doesn't matter. The whole point of introduction is just to break the ice. There is no signal there. And so 2 minutes is probably like a perfect slice. Then task definition and requirements. Like I would say, like try to think in terms of MVP, and some things which I don't agree. Like offline is pretty much a must, pretty much a must these days. So I would not put offline like, oh, it's not important, right? So you don't need to talk a lot about features themselves, right? So it's really good to go just like bullet point list, like this, and this. When you just talk about how good it is, how bad it is, it doesn't provide any signal. It just like wastes your stuff. Then you like functional requirements. You mentioned authentication, privacy, end-to-end. Those are not requirements. This is just like some concerns you may have, or you may put like non-functional requirements. But I would keep end-to-end encryption like out of it, or maybe just said, okay, depending on how we want to store messages, if we want to store them on backend, if we want to store them on the client. So this is a question you should be asking, like, where do we want to store our messages? And then you can bring like different options and weight like pros and cons. Another thing, like coming to you, MVP, checking if it's like group chats, one-on-one, some stuff which still worth mentioning, like do we need to have real-time notification? Do we need to have rigorous receipts, etc. Then coming to non-functional requirements, battery and optimization is not really a requirement. It's like, oh yeah, this is a concern we have, but I would not put it like, oh, battery and optimization. What kind of optimization? That doesn't provide clear signals. Attachments, I would personally add attachments, at least photo attachments, because text-only chats are they're all long gone, right? And another big point, no need to summarize the requirements. So like we spent like 7 minutes, which we should probably spend more like 5. And this is because like going circles, it doesn't provide any useful information and just takes your own time. And this is why I had to interrupt you a lot, right? So this is like when in an interview had to interrupt you, it's basically frustrating for the interviewer, and then they might be biased when submitting a report. So this part. When we get to high level discussion, I didn't. So I clearly saw that you tried to present multi-tier architecture, right? But it doesn't help me understand how the app going to be built. So I can see components. It's just bunch of boxes, and so if you get this and like give it to your team, it would be very confusing for them how to actually build the system. When you talk about high-level design, this is like 30-feet view of the system. So this is what you're going to be used for your modularization. This is what you split between like different teams, etc. Right? So this is why you bring use cases, and use cases were not clear, right? So no need to list them all, because like any duplication doesn't help. It just takes the time. And it seems like you learn about them from somewhere, but you were not really sure about why you need them, right? And this is why I said I start asking questions. Okay, what's the purpose? And then you clarify it just a bit. Let's see. You mentioned repository pattern a lot, right? And it's all about this like encapsulation and stuff. Repository, basically, its primary purpose is just to merge different data sources without exposing them. And I would say I would leave it for more low-level discussions than using the high level and just concentrating on components, because the more stuff you draw, the more time it takes. When you just put abstract components, you immediately suggest topics to discuss and don't deeper details unless your interview really wants it. Yeah, and same for like repos use cases. Like you don't need to duplicate them. You don't need to talk about everything because they pretty much the same. Okay, and then the whole split between domain and data layer is not clear. It's just the interface is going to sit in domain, but data going to sit like interface is located at domain, implementation at data. This part is confusing. Okay. Well, another thing which gives the feeling is that you have like this notion on how to structure a solution in your head. Maybe you learn it from the internet and you try to fit whatever task at hand you have into this solution. So this is a feeling which I get. Okay, then, so we spent 10 minutes on this. This is about how much time you would like to spend, but I would try to cover more ground. Network, you started describing lots of protocols, like in very, very high level fashion, but I still didn't clear good advantages and disadvantages. So for example, for HTTP and REST, right? This is basically a server cannot initiate REST connection. Only client can do that, right? And polling, etc. It's like workarounds, but they're not good. They also schemaless. So verifying data is hard compared to anything with schema like GraphQL or gRPC. And then WebSocket, and you said that WebSocket are connectionless, which is not true as far as I understand it. And then you mentioned that it's a TCP IP and battery stuff, but what not clear what exactly you would use WebSockets for. Like chatting, it's very important, but there is no clear signal. And basically what I tried to do, okay, so would you use WebSockets for everything? You said, yes, WebSockets are good, let's use them. But I would clearly see like some REST APIs and stuff to get a list of chats, to fetch messages, etc. What we didn't discuss is pagination. You mentioned it down the road, but pagination is really important. And I would probably like also mention as non-functional requirements, like, okay, so what we need to do, we need to save traffic because as I said, there might be like massive amounts of data. Okay, and then when you go offline, I would say no need to apologize. You make mistakes, it's okay. Like what interviewer trying to get is just to get signal out of you. So when you apologize, you provide no useful signal. You mentioned single source of truth, but could not properly explain why you need it. So we mentioned about maintain, debugging, but this is not why you need a single source of truth. Single source of truth is like when you try to make sure that there are going to be no conflicting data. So for example, you have something on the disk, you have something in UI and something from the network, and now you don't need, you have no idea which is which, like which one you should trust. Like once again, there's lots of talking, no signal. This is why I had to interrupt you. Then you mentioned you started talking about shared preferences, any other kinds. But in this case, I would say, like if I would be doing that, I would say I would probably select relational database. Why? Because we need current syntax, right? We want to get some very specific data from database, like from a set of structured records, and database probably like the most obvious candidate for this. And you don't really need to go like very deep because I trust you that you know how database work, at least like why use it. Like once again, you keep bringing repo usage and keep like dodging my question. So I said, okay, how would you store data? And you said, okay, I'm going to be using repo. I said, this is not what I'm trying to get. How would you store data? You said, we're going to use pagination. And once again, I need to keep moving you back to the question. And then you keep adding stuff like plugins. So you keep complicating design, which is not what you want to do. You want to get like the absolute minimum for the interviewer to get the signal and move to something else, unless interviewer wants to dig deeper. And one question which I can see people might ask, like, why did I stop you and not digging deeper? The reason for it, I got all the signal I need. So there is no need to try to educate the candidate or make them guess. This is not what interviews are all about. I got the signal, move on. Got the signal, move on. I saw other interviews like digging deeper. Okay, like imagine how would you build it? It's not necessary. Like what are you trying to get? You try to get a signal. And I would say the signal like, hey, candidate still needs work. Candidate does understand this. Candidate has strong points here. And this is what I'm going to put in my report. I'm going to screenshot this and submit it to hiring committee and hope for the best.